Well, here we are now, about 10 days away from the beginning of a new year. And that, of course, gives us an opportunity to really look back on some of the top stories of this year. And certainly, Elon Musk's Twitter takeover continues to make some headlines.
So to help break it all down for us, we're joined live by technology expert Amber MacArthur. Amber, welcome to the show. It's great to have you in person in the studio after all the tech and Zoom of the pandemic. So what was the first sign, we're talking about Elon Musk, that his takeover was not business as usual?
I think really one of the first signs was when he walked into the Twitter headquarters at the end of October with a sink, and he basically tweeted out and he said, "Let that sink in." I think that was probably the first sign that this was going to potentially be a rocky road. And then soon after, he laid off almost 50% of the company all around the world.
And of course, just in the last few days, he put that poll out, Amber, that said, should I resign as CEO of Twitter? It was a resounding yes. Almost 58% of respondents said yes, he should resign. So the turmoil has continued. I mean, his bizarre reign so far has sort of continued here. What do you make of what this is going to mean for not just Twitter, but social media in general? Because he seems to be disrupting, but he's almost disrupting his own platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think what we're really seeing here is the erosion of trust. I think we have platforms like Twitter that to some extent people actually trusted their experience on Twitter. They knew what happened if you broke the rules. They knew how you get verified. But all of a sudden, over the past 6 weeks or so, what we've seen is that people aren't really sure what they can share. Can you share a link to Facebook or not? All of the rules are in this constant state of flux. And I think that lends to the erosion of that trust that we're seeing with social media, which really causes huge problems for its future.
And of course, we've seen many, high-profile celebrities actually just leave the platform altogether. But going back to, he slashed his team. So he's obviously working with a smaller team right now, and yet he's holding these online polls. So how do these votes actually affect the Twitter community?
Well, it certainly is very unusual. We saw this a few weeks ago when he asked people if he should reinstate President Donald Trump. The poll was a yes, and so he did just that, although President Trump is not tweeting too much because he has his own social media platform. So what we're seeing is it's kind of decision-making by Twitter poll. I mean, this really hasn't been done in business, not because it's new and innovative, because it just doesn't make any sense, really. And I think what we're seeing at the end of the day is that it doesn't feel like there's anyone in charge, and we're really at the whim of what Elon Musk wants to do. And
it's really interesting because, they say there's no such thing as bad press, but it seems like all Twitter's been getting for the last, like you said, 6 or 7 weeks is really bad press. So I wonder, can you crystal ball the future of Twitter, or is it just so perplexing and puzzling because we don't know effectively what Elon Musk may tweet tomorrow? So how can we know what the future of Twitter may be?
I think it's fair to say that Elon Musk is going to have to pull back from Twitter a little bit in terms of how much he's tweeting and how much control he has. He said that he is currently looking for a new CEO, someone to replace him, although he says it's difficult to find someone who can do that job. But we know that it's been impacting his other companies like Tesla, which has lost hundreds of billions of dollars in market share. So I think at the end of the day, what will happen is that Twitter, I think, will remain intact. I think there is a brighter future, but I think this was kind of a pretty big blip in its history.
And Amber, he said he wanted to take over Twitter to make it more democratic. And ironically, he just suspended a bunch of journalists. And a lot of journalists, as you know, rely on Twitter for news these days. So what effect do you think that had?
Well, I think if you remember the early days of Twitter, and I think we're all old enough to remember those, it was a platform where anyone could share their opinion, anyone could share what they were going through. And what we've seen in terms of this viewpoint that he has as far as fighting for free speech is that he's actually put more limitations on the platform than there were before. He's actually suspended journalists even if they haven't necessarily broken rules or regulations. He's stopped people from being able to post links. And so all of a sudden, he's actually clamping down on free speech during this process.
So, Amber, what has this meant to other social media platforms? Has there been any sort of, while Twitter may seem to be sort of falling or fading, has Facebook gone up? I've not gone on it, but Mastodon is one, Post News is another one. I'm not really familiar. I haven't checked them out myself yet, but what has this meant to the other platforms out there?
Well, I imagine they're kind of, laughing at the situation right now, thinking we have a good opportunity to kind of thrive. And so we are seeing those alternatives to Twitter. We're also seeing, I think, Facebook in terms of growing as far as the engagement there. Some people deciding, I'm going to go back to these platforms where I used to be. I think that will likely continue until things really settle down at Twitter. But I think at the end of the day, Twitter offers us a platform that is so easy to use, so easy to get breaking news, that that's going to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amber, I'm curious if there are any critics or theorists in the tech world who are speculating as to what he is doing. Is this a strategy? Is this his social media art installation? or is this creating bad press because, you know, any press is good press, essentially? What's the talk out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are trying to figure out what he's doing. You know, is he having a bad day? Is he going through a midlife crisis? Does he have too many children to manage? I mean, we really don't know the answer to all of this. But I think it's fair to say that he is kind of the king of chaos. Even though this is going to lead to hate tweets towards me, I think that we can say that that is true. So it's hard to understand where his head is. I kind of feel like he's a bored billionaire. And this was fun for a while, but he knows, okay, it's time to stop. Maybe we need to take things a little more seriously in 2023.
Well, we'll definitely be watching in 2023. Tech expert Amber MacArthur, thanks for the insight on this. It's amazing to think we could dominate one whole story just on Twitter for the year.
Elon Musk
But it's been so significant. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much.